and welcome back to Hindustan Astrology. I'm Katya, and today I have back my mentor, Santhip. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Yeah, namaste, Katya. Thank you for inviting me also.
Namaste, Santhipji. So today we're going to talk about some remedial measures that you can take for the planets. And these are according to the theory of debilitation and how you can strengthen a planet when it's weak. And there are different tools that we can use, such as yantras and gemstones, and also essential oils. So, this is all based on the Navagraha, and these are the traditional 9 planets of Vedic astrology. So with that, I'd like to introduce Santhip and just have us tell us, your perspective on Navagraha and, what you do, how you use your tools.
All right. Well, before we get into the Navagrahas and Yantras and so forth, we can just talk a little bit on a simpler topic which most of the people can relate to, which is basically sacred geometry, right? So sacred geometry is something everyone can understand. So for instance, you have the golden flower, you have the Merkaba, you have all kinds of sacred geometry figures out there. So what are some other sacred geometry figures which you would introduce, Katya, and why would you call them as sacred? What do you think about that?
Well, because they're seen throughout nature, and especially like the Vesica Pisces and the flower of life. I mean, that's even on a pyramid in China. This is something that's so old, and our ancestors observed nature and they just started observing patterns and they started writing them down. And so that's how sacred geometry is linked up with, different frequencies, like in cymatics, where, you take the metal plate with sand on it and you hook up an electrode to music, and the frequency of the music creates different sacred geometry patterns in the sand. And so it's something that we've noticed since we were children. I think it's the most basic form of education, really, when you observe nature.
Right. So exactly right. So sacred geometry is something that came out of, it is sacred because it is natural also. It is out there in nature. So you could actually connect with a lot of simple sacred geometry, like, now, when you begin to get into sacred geometry, you begin to encounter terms like golden ratio, geometrical shapes that are carrying golden ratio, and things like that. So in fact, there is the golden spiral which one can create, based on a golden ratio kind of expanding and all that, and then you can, color it in different kind of ways and so forth. And not only that, there are many other very sacred geometries that are out there. In fact, when you visit all these sacred sites, across the globe, you do find certain sites are embedded with certain kind of geometrical patterns actually. So the flower of life, the Vesica Pisces, as you mentioned, is a image, like you have 2 overlapping circles, but and it's a very famous image actually. So supposed to actually carry the energy of Pisces easily, because of 2 overlapping images, 2 overlapping circles to be more precise.
So you have 2 circles and they overlap, and the section where they overlap creates an almond shape. And this shape is, is so important in so many different aspects.
Right. So yeah, so remember that. So now what is interesting is that when you begin to work with sacred geometry, they can actually be healing for you. So when you actually meditate upon the flower of life, for instance, when you actually meditate to you can actually do more things with sacred geometry. In fact, I was just listening to someone who was mentioning who had their own healing journey. So they literally got trashed by an car accident, and then they did not have any motor neuron functions and so forth. And then they started to just work with sacred geometry initially. They just started to make their own sacred geometry thing. They just started to color them up. Eventually, one by one, their the nervous systems began to recover. So sacred geometry can also be healing actually. So in fact, these sacred geometries, when you begin to work with them, they become a very powerful tool for your own accelerating your own consciousness process. They just call it that way. So what is interesting is that yantras is actually belonging to this particular category. So yantras are basically the sacred geometries which the sages have found to be working, to be more precise. So they found that when you work with one set of sacred geometry, you are capable of getting very specific kind of results. And not only that, it could also be healing for you also.
Yeah, these are the yantras for all of the 9 planets. So that's what he's talking about, or the actual, it's like a mandala, but it's actually a picture of the frequency.
All right. So let me give a little bit more of the background to a yantra also. So yantra. So let's just put it this way. So you have sacred geometrical thing, and certain sacred geometry can resonate, help you resonate with a particular frequency. So like for instance, when you look at a triangle, you'll feel a little bit different compared to when you look at a circle, or when you look at a square for that matter. Or now, depending upon the orientation of a triangle, you might feel different also. So when you're looking at an upward facing triangle, you might feel like, okay, I need to be more active, for instance. When you're looking at a downward facing triangle, you feel like, okay, I need to settle down, for that matter. When you're looking at a square, it feels more stable. When you're looking at a circle, you feel more expansive. You feel like, okay, I just want to spread my energy and so forth. That's one way of looking at it. Now, what if those simpler geometrical shapes could combine with sacred geometrical ratios? What would be the results of that? Can you combine these geometrical figures and help you in working a very specific way of feeling, or specific aspect of frequency within yourself? Actually, that's the real thing. Now, in fact, cymatics is a very important thing. In fact, so to help others understand about cymatics, basically what you do in cymatics is that you can find these videos online very easily, in which they have sprinkled these sand particles on a vibrating kind of a board, and then on top of that, when you allow that vibrating board to be vibrating at a particular frequency, suddenly there are these natural resonance patterns, these beautiful geometrical patterns with these sand particles actually arrange themselves depending upon the frequency that you're actually allowing the board to vibrate. That is pointing to this. Our fundamental universe is geometric in nature in one particular level, and depending upon the frequency which you're actually dealing with. And that becomes a very important point, because you see these patterns naturally arising. So literally it's like a observable phenomenon. So that's the best way to put that also. And and what the interesting thing is that when you actually meditate upon the patterns that are formed, and you can get some very powerful results also. So in fact, these intricate patterns are also formed with the musical scales, for instance. You can find very specific kind of patterns formed by the musical scales.
Absolutely.
And they have their own kind of beauty to it. They have their own kind of blessings to it and all that. It's a very other important aspect of the patterns that are formed out in nature. In fact, and then now we are getting into the real meat of it, right? So for instance, what was actually observed was that, and then when you began to chant certain mantras, when you are actually saying some, chanting a particular mantra, say for Ganesha, for instance, or for Goddess Durga for that matter, or when you are chanting a mantra for, even just chanting the Om mantra, for instance. So when you chant one particular mantra again and again, so of course the sound which you're speaking, which you're producing, is also carrying a particular vibration. And eventually, as your perceptions get deeper, the sages and rishis were actually able to perceive the geometric pattern which was linked directly with the sound. So what essentially you can say,
and a color, because
course,
each frequency is like, it's like a starshine, or the shine of that planet.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So you could see that now, of course, when and depending upon the energy of the mantra, you would see that actually reflected in the observable patterns also equally. So sometimes you might see triangles, sometimes you might see circles, sometimes you might see an intricate pattern which is actually giving you the results and so forth. So what eventually came about was that the yantras were actually a geometric form that was observed as a result of meditating upon certain mantras. Now, and that is the other aspect. So eventually what came out of all this is that when you would actually meditate upon a particular deity, when you would actually work with a particular deity, for instance, the deity would be carrying a particular energy, a particular vibration, all these gods and goddesses that are out there. So when you actually work with them, of course, traditionally you would actually worship a goddess or a god using a murti or an idol, and that has its own thing. So the idol is like a portal of sorts in which you can actually link with a particular energy out there in the universe. That's the easiest way
a small
to.
statue, right? Yeah, or a
Exactly,
large
yeah.
statue.
Yeah, a small or a small or a large statue, but the key thing is that the statue will have its own proportions. It has to fit in a specific proportion to carry the energy. So that's the other thing also. So and these proportions are laid down in text and so forth and all that. That's a different matter also. And now statue has its own world to it. It's a complete universe by itself. Now, and statue has its own processes also. In fact, there is this process in which you call something as a prana pradishta. Prana pradishta is something in which you infuse a life force within that statue. And when that statue is supposed to come alive at that point, that's a completely, most of the traditional Brahmins, the priests in a temple, they actually work with that kind of process actually. So the same process also now, but normally you would actually worship a statue with a mantra. So what if you could actually connect with this mantra? Of course, is a sound form. You cannot see them, but a yantra now becomes a very powerful tool for you to connect with the energy of a mantra. Because now what happens is that the goddess or the god whom you're actually worshipping through the mantras literally is the same as the yantra as well.
It's what we Native Americans call the Indian radio. It's when you got a direct line to that planet through these mantras, through the colors and the yantras. It's like picking up the phone. Okay, we got to talk. And it's an instantaneous connection. That's the cool thing.
Right. So the yantras are very interesting in terms of the geometrical pattern. It's like you have a three-dimensional deity, and now you are basically compressing them into two dimensions. It's like a two-dimensional picture. But what is interesting is that even if you consider the fact that we are all living in a completely connected world in which you have this theory of we are living in a holographic world in which everything is a hologram of sorts. If that be the case, then you can see that hologram is created from a two-dimensional plate. You project light through a two-dimensional plate, then you get a three-dimensional hologram actually. So the same thing, that's why yantras, two-dimensional images become very powerful actually. So they become very powerful ways to deal with a very deeper aspect of reality actually. So when you work with yantras, it's a very powerful thing. So in fact, there are many kinds of yantras also, different depending upon the energy which you are trying to invoke and all that. So of course, the king of all yantras is called as the Sri Yantra. Sri Yantra is the yantra in which you have a lot of triangles in it, a lot of upward facing triangles and downward facing triangles and all that. And then you have a circle, which is finally bounded by a square of sorts, so that each of those elements have its own meaning also. So commonly in a yantra, the square is supposed to represent the earth element, and then you have the water, then you have the circle, which is represent the air element, and then you have the upward facing triangle, which is the masculine energy, and that is supposed to represent the fire element. And then you have the downward facing triangle, which is the feminine energy, and that is representing the water element. So, so then you find different deities and different gods and goddesses are of various proportions of these elements actually. So you're basically working with an intelligent force capable of vibrating at a particular frequency connected with the elements. The key thing is that all these deities are also consciousness aspects. So yantra becomes like an aspect of consciousness. Now, consciousness is superior to the elements also. So yantra is like you are kind of mixing all this up, and then when you're infusing that with mantras and energy and attention and awareness, now suddenly you can actually bring that consciousness down upon yourself also. So it
Right.
becomes a very, very powerful tool. In fact, they say um, when you chant mantras to a yantra, similarly, just like how an idol is considered to be lifeless, with yantras also, with each of the yantras, the important aspect of a yantra is also the central point, which is called the bindu. Now, the bindu is the key to the yantra. Now, bindu is the origin point of all the yantra. All the yantras will have a center point. And that's also equally important. It's just a dot. So that is also a representation of the infinite energy, in the infinite potential from which this yantra is as one of them. Now, yantra is this energy. It's like a geometrical pattern that is around you. The bindu is the center point. So you can call as the yantra as the Shakti, which is the feminine force. And then the bindu is the masculine dot from which the masculine stable point from which everything is coming out. So that's also equally very important. In fact, usually when you're meditating upon yantras, a simple way to meditate upon any yantra for that matter is to just begin from the outside. You go over each of the outer layers and so forth, and then you go layer by layer to the point where you actually meditate and finally end up meditating on the bindu in the center. That's a
Oh,
very powerful
wow.
meditation actually.
So how do you know where to start?
So yeah, you begin at one of the edges
So this
actually.
is
So
the
you can,
sun.
Mhm. Yeah. So you can see, you can just hold it up, Katya. So you can see like when you're meditating upon this particular yantra, for instance, so you would actually look at the outer edges first. You look at the top edge, then you look at the right edge, then you look at the bottom edge, and left edge, and so forth. And then
So
you
go
would
right
go
in this.
within the then you would go into the first outer circle, which is the black circle and all that. Now you can see
Okay.
in this yantra, within the first black circle and the next inner circle, there are petals there actually. Now, petals are also representing, and along with petals, there are also different colors also. So petals are actually representing what is actually unfolding. So you'll see
Oh,
that, each of those petals are actually characterizing or capturing one particular aspect of energy, that particular energy or that particular understanding that is actually unfolding within you actually. So that's the key thing. So yantras are actually pointing to changes or the aspects of consciousness happening within you. So it's a very internalized process actually, and it's a technology. It's an actual, now yantra technically translates to a machine. So this is a consciousness shifting machine. So just show that again. Let me just highlight one more thing. So you can see as you go to the outside circle, you go to the next inner circle, and then finally within the third most inner circle, you see it's like a white circle of sort, and then finally you have a neutral picture and neutral a Star of David of swords happening, which you see an upward facing triangle in equilibrium with the downward facing triangle. And then you can see the innermost bindu, which I mentioned. The innermost bindu is a dot, which you can clearly see it. So that innermost bindu is the final resting point. That is the source and the origin. So, and the whole yantra, meditation upon yantra is an aspect in which you are actually trying to connect this Shiva with Shakti. You are trying to connect with the dot with the rest of the yantra. That's what it
it's
actually
like form
happens.
with space.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's well. Let me put it to be more precise. It's more like the formless with the form. That's the way to look at that actually. So form is also having having the shapes around it, the geometric petals around it, and all that. The geometric patterns around it is also carrying that. Now, used to be that you would actually inscribe these yantras on copper plates, on silver plates, or on golden plates, and then you would chant mantras, and then finally when you invoke, the energy will be built up by the practitioner, and they would actually charge this yantra by putting this dot in the final point. And the moment he or she has put this bindu upon the yantra, then the yantras come alive. So that's the other thing also. So you see this
Very
particular
interesting.
so then at that point, this yantra has become very alive, and then it's a living yantra. It is carrying the energy of that particular deity, the energy which you're trying to connect with at that point. So many times you'll find online, you'll get all these energized yantra, as it's called. So this is what you see. So the Brahmin or the priest or the tantric who is working with the yantra, is actually capable of capturing as invoke that energy, and that energy is infused into that yantra with that. And usually many different kind of items are also offered to the yantra, depending upon the kind of goddess or god you're trying to connect with. So for instance, most of the yantras, you would put a sandalwood paste upon the yantra. Many times you would offer flowers to the yantra. You would offer the red vermilion, which is a red kumkum as it's called. You would also offer red kumkum to the yantra through different aspects of the yantra. So for instance, it's like you find all these Kali devotees, they wear these red tilaks. The red thing is, the red dot is what they wear on their forehead. The same kumkum is actually offered to these particular portions of the yantras to energize it further, actually. So that makes it very strong.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So
I have a question because this is where this is going for us. We are going to make, of course, custom order. If somebody wants to get their chart, and it will be glass encapsulated with the copper band, their birth chart, and then we can make these smaller 2x2 versions, and then you would energize your chart with the yantra while you're meditating upon it, meditating upon the planet, like help me to, rectify this part of my chart. What do you think about that? Would that work?
So let's now get down to the aspect of planets. So of course, planets are also energies. They are also consciousness agents. They're capable of shifting your consciousness. That's why they call us Grahas, right? So Graha is something that is capturing or actually, seizing your consciousness. So, so planets do have their own yantras. That's a very easy thing. So planets are also having their own yantras, and they have their own patterns and so forth. And then when you equally, the same kind of meditative aspect can be used with that. Of course, there are different ways of working with yantras. Different traditions approach it in different ways, and so forth. And that's fine. And many times, usually working with the yantra is usually normally passed on from a teacher to a student. Though there are some simpler practices, some people can pick up on reading books and all that, and all that is also there. But yeah, in general, yantra is a form aspect. It is the aspect of form in which you are in, and they say to every yantra, a mantra is also an equal key to it. So the mantra is actually what unlocks that yantra.
Right.
So you find
like
the geometric.
The lock. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so it's just yantra, like with our cells, our cells literally have to be turned on, and it's usually by a frequency. Exactly. And one thing I noticed about sun, I just have to say, I always wondered why the color of Surya, the sun, is crimson red, dark red, versus like yellow or orange, right? Well, when I was at the beach a couple of weeks ago, I figured out because I got a sunburn, and I went, oh, that's why the sun is red. Because it's the light, it's the effect of that planet's frequency or light upon you. I mean, if you were to get burned by, Saturn, it would be blue, so.
Right. So you're blue when you're sad, you're blues, right? You're in the blues, actually. You start listening to blues when you're sad too, right?
Exactly.
So you can see that.
Or the moon, yeah.
Yeah, or the moon also. So that's the other aspect also. With Grahas, of course, we have as students of astrology ourselves, these yantras of the Grahas are also equally powerful. Chanting a mantra to the yantra is equally powerful, or simply connecting with the energy of the yantra is also equally powerful.
Yeah, so you can hold this. This is glass encapsulated with a copper band, so the copper amplifies the energy. And, every day I just hold it and just focus on the yantra while I'm doing my mantra of the day. And you don't have to, bend over backwards. I mean, it doesn't take that long, I mean, a half an hour is not that long.
Right.
So sit it and focus on that. And, you'll be surprised at how your frequency syncs up with the frequency of the day, and how it just flows easier. Things, you get more done when you're in tune. So I guess this is like a cosmic tune-up.
So let's talk about that, Katya. So it seems like you are offering these cosmic yantras as, which products which people can purchase that from your website and so forth. So what are you actually offering?
So my friend Sherry Lynn, she makes what are called cosmic healing discs. And she makes, several, hundreds of different kinds, right? So we work together on a special project where I'm the only one selling these. And these are the Navagraha cosmic healing discs. So each one has the yantra of the planet and the color on the back. It looks more orange with the light on it, but it's a darker red in person. And then my friend Brittany Maxey of Sarvani Designs made these bracelets to go with each planet, and it has a pendant with the glyph on it. So this is the one for Sun. And it just helps you tune in to what's going on. And what I've discovered, and they also go with my Navagraha aromatherapy elixirs. So these are an essential oil perfume that you can use in conjunction with these tools. And they're just meditation tools to help you, just tune yourself up. And these are things that I do for myself anyway. So I thought, why not share them with people? Because, we all need all the help we can get right now to feel better,
Right. So yantras are definitely great. One more additional way, so which I can encourage for people to use the yantras and so forth. This is something I can say which has seen working also. Usually, what I encourage these native is to create their own yantras also. So like for instance, you can find now, what is interesting with the Grahas is that you can actually find a version and number grid version of a yantra, which is much more easier to work with. You can actually make a magic square of sorts connect with each graha, and you can find those online easily. And for instance, so say you are lacking in energy or something like that, what I encourage the native is to make their own yantra. So for them, say, so you are lacking in energy, the solution is you need energy. So the planet is Mars. So on a Tuesday, in the first hour of the Tuesday, when Mars 4 will be running, at that point, you basically use a color of Mars, which is red. You draw actually the number grid there. Now you try to draw the number grid in a continuous fashion. You're not drawing it randomly and all that. You try to draw it in continuous fashion, and you draw it without any mistake, usually with attention and intention. And then you actually fill the magic square in the increasing number of orders. So you first enter the number in the lowest number is first entered first, and then you would add the next numbers and so forth. And then now you have now it's drawn on a paper. It's a red colored magic square which you have created yourself on a Mars Yantra day, actually on a Mars day, which is a Tuesday. And then you would basically laminate it, right? So, and then the next recommendation is that every day you basically put a red colored candle on top of that Mars Yantra. As simple as that. And then you would basically light that candle every day, no matter what. So then I actually recommended this to a client who was facing depression. So that is a typical Saturn problem, actually. So when you're going through Saturn return, it is normal for people to actually go through depression. And I've been recommending this to other clients also, and you can extend the same logic to other yantras as well. So what interestingly happened was this particular client actually, started to experience bursts of energy. And then eventually, that she could not be depressed anymore. She was basically in her own home. And then literally she started going out actually from that point, because she had so much energy. So she could not stay in the home, so straight for that. So these energies can be very powerful. In fact, Mars is a very powerful yantra for you to do when you're sleeping for invoking protection, actually. So when you're sleeping, you can actually put a candle, light a candle on the Mars, put the red candle. Now, of course, you can put the color of the planet again with the candles also. So you're dealing with Mars energies, you can use your red candle, for instance, So say you're dealing with Jupiter energy. Now you can be using yellow candle. So Jupiter energy, you could actually be putting it on of course, you'll have to create the number yantra with your own, with yellow color also. That's the other thing. So then you can do that and so forth. So that's the other typical thing which I usually recommend. And of course, once you laminated the yantra, you can charge the water you're drinking with it. That's a common thing actually. You can charge items with it potentially, and all that. So, what
Basically, you're
typically,
putting the yantra on underneath the cup,
exactly
like a
right,
coaster. Yeah, that's why you want
exactly
to
right,
laminate it.
right, exactly right. So no, that is right. So you can do it that way. So water which you're doing, you can do it like that and all that, and then that becomes a very powerful thing actually. So eventually, the what happens with certain yantras is that the energy from the pattern will begin to come out and create a shield of sorts. That can also happen. You'll begin to see certain energies coming around, especially depending upon the energy infused into the yantra. You'll see that when the energy is infused is strong, it becomes a very
Mhm.
powerful thing. So with these coasters, with the healing disc which you have, this is also something easily I can recommend. If people do get them to actually light a candle of that particular color on
Uh-huh.
the backside color, and just put that on top of the disc and basically put fire, light a candle every night or something like that. Or you can do it during the day also. That will also activate the energy quite easily also. That also I can really encourage. And I've seen that to be working. So I'm sure, of course, it's self-created yantra, it's a different process and all that. But I'm sure this will also work with what you what you have to offer also. So it'll be
Right.
great.
And
Yes.
also, you can use these with Vastu in your home. So if you have, if you have someone help you with your chart and Vastu, and you find out where the weak areas are of your home are for that year, you can rectify those areas by using these discs.
So could you elaborate more on that? How would one go about that, and what would
Well,
be an
I
example
mean,
for
just
it?
like how we place Ganesha in different areas of our home to protect us, we do that with yantras too. And so, I mean, I'm not a Vastu expert. I actually am looking for somebody to interview to talk about it. I know a couple different people, but they're usually pretty busy. So if anybody knows about Vastu, I would love to dive deeper into this because I love feng shui, which is the Chinese version of how to position your home to get maximum abundance and wealth each year. And so it changes each year with the transits. And so that's why you have to have your chart read with, what's going on. And then they tell you, okay, well, in the north, you've got something, weak with your Saturn. And so we need to put the Saturn Yantra here, and actually in feng shui, I do know that the southeast corner is the wealth corner. And so right now, that's where I have the majority of my discs and especially my Sri Yantra disc is there. I'm not selling the Sri Yantra, although Sherry does have it available if you're interested, but it's a much bigger one. But I've got that with Venus Stargate. I've got my Ganesha ones there, and I've got lights because these are light activated. And so how that, can work while you're doing your mantras. Now, these are not see-through. She does make some see-through ones, and we were having some issues, just technical issues in trying to get it, trying to make the shape of the yantra pop through and be clear at the same time. We couldn't get the colors to work out, and we both felt like it was more important to have bright colors than for them to be see-through, right? But when you buy them, they come with these little flashlights. And so you can use that to light activate them. You can put them under, behind it to light activate, which is kind of cool. You just get, it's hard to see on here with that bright light, but you could do what you were saying with the light by starting at the top and following that light along the grid in a spiral pattern all the way to the middle. The light works really well with that. And then you get the, added benefit of light activating the yantra. And so this one is Sun, Surya. This is the bracelet. And Brittany tried to pick things that would really help, increase your vitality, but not overactivate. When Sun's exalted in Aries, he can be a little bit arrogant. And so we don't want to add too much red. You want to add things that help that energy sustain itself. you know, and not be overwhelming, right? Here's Moon. And she's got the color gel on the back. So this is a light blue. And then here's the moon bracelet. It's got a lot of lovely moonstone, sandstone. I love this one. And you know what I've discovered, Santhip, is that, of course, you know, it's good to do them with the days of the week, but people are always attracted to, of course, the transits that are going on in their chart, but what dasha cycle they're in. That really, really kind of is foremost on what they gravitate towards. It's very interesting. And the oils that I've made, when people smell them, I can tell what's going on in their chart just by what they like and what they don't like. You know, it's pretty clear. It's wild. And so this one is Mercury. And of course, he's green. We've got a lovely green aventurine and some other green stones with that. Then we have Venus. See, this one's, it's very light in the center. There we go. There we go. Now you can see. And she did a light pink on the back. And then this is the Venus bracelet. It's clear quartz and white coral. That's actually what I have on today since it's Friday here. And then we have Mars. And then he is blood red. And then we've got a red bracelet with carnelian and different red coral, different things for Mars. And we have Jupiter. Yellow on the back, and then our yellow stones. And we have Saturn. And he is a cobalt blue. And this is my favorite bracelet for Saturn, right? Purple and blue, all this lapis and amethyst. Oh, I just love it. It's so pretty. Then we have Rahu. And purple on the back. And then we have some different green and purple and hematite, which is very grounding, very good for Rahu. And then we have Ketu. And this color gel, it's a little bit light for my liking. She was working with the brown, and so the next set will be more of a an earthy brown versus a peachy kind of flesh tone color. But it still works. And then, of course, Tiger's Eye is the best Ketu stone. So this is mainly Tiger's Eye, but it also has Hawk's Eye stone in it as well. And all of the discs, all of the single discs run for $111 each. And the large one is $144, and they all come with stands and a velvet bag. You can keep them in for travel or whatever. And yeah, these are just, you know, my little babies that I have now that I really, you know, these are such simple techniques that you can use to just enhance and get in tune with the frequency of the planet and help to rectify any debilitations you have, you know, because each planet has another planet that cancels the debilitation. So there's a way that you can combine them. I we'll put the link down below of the video where I talk about that. We won't have to go over that today. But yeah, I mean, and honestly, you know, your body knows what you need, and you will automatically gravitate towards the one that you want, that your body needs, and that your chart needs to help you in, you know, whatever process of growth you're at.
And you said you observed people when you're often when they would pick up these whatever the Dasha they were running, they would pick up those corresponding to the.
Oh yeah, and with the oils too. I mean, you know, it's wild. You know, like whatever is going on with you, that is the frequency you're going to gravitate towards, and the thing that you're trying to avoid, that's the one that you don't like. You know,
I see.
And you need them both.
You need them both?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
What do you say?
Yeah, to balance. Well, the thing that you don't like is the thing that you're running from, right?
Right.
The thing that, you know, is difficult. For instance, sun, right? I was like, oh yes, I love all of them, but sun, whatever, you know,
right.
And I get sunburned. So clearly that planet say, no, you know, pay attention to me. And the one that I love the most is Saturn.
Right.
You know, but you can't stay on one frequency. You've got to balance yourself. Just like music, whatever music you're attracted to. And one important thing I wanted to say about music and healing is that people in a coma report all the time. I watch all these paranormal shows and things like that, that when they're in a coma, they hear music, especially classical music, like things that are, you know, basic frequencies that are being combined in orchestral ways, right? Chords and symphonies and things that are complicated. That's your body healing itself. They were hearing their body healing itself. And because you have the divine intelligence inside of you, that when you hook it up with, you know, the Akashic records and the divine intelligence there, it's like a direct download. So when you're in a coma, you're just getting constant downloads. And then they come out of the coma and they're like, oh my God, I'm here. What was that music you guys were playing in the room? Oh, we weren't playing anything, you know?
I see.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so great, Katya. So this is what I have to offer. So it's great. So hopefully people do use their use your cosmic healing disc and engage on with their healing journey also. So it'll be interesting to see also what happens, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, last weekend I gave a talk at the Serpent Mound Star Knowledge Conference, which was in Southern Ohio. It was a celebration of life for Chief Golden Light Eagle. And you know, at first day I came in, I was very sad, you know, crying off and on. But then he was like, I could hear him on the other side saying, no, you have something these people need to hear. You know, knock it off, you know? So by Sunday, when I gave my talk, I had 30 people there, and they really loved what I was saying about the theory of debilitation of the planets and how, you know, how different plant families go with different planets and how you can use them to get in tune with that. And afterward, you know, I sold out all of my samples. So I think people are hungry for this information. It's something that, look, you know, we're in this solar system with all these other planets, and their light frequencies being grounded into our Earth through the plant kingdom. So if you want to get to know the other members of our solar system, then get to know the plant kingdom on Earth, because she's absorbing all of those frequencies and putting them back out. That's why everybody wants to come here. That's why, you know, we are so lucky to live on this planet. I mean, really, you know. And one thing I learned, you know, studying with Chief, because he teaches about what we call the fixed stars, right? And he teaches what are called the Wachahwe Oyate, which are the star nations. and how we can look at these fixed stars as, star relatives, right? So as soon as I started studying with him, it was like right up into the stars and just like, oh my God, Pleiadian, Arcturian, Sirian, Vegan, all this stuff, right? And I wanted to start researching it. And so last year I told you, oh, I want to write this book on the fixed stars. I have all these ideas, blah, blah, blah. And my spirit guides were like, slow down. You're putting the cart before the horse, right? And finally, they gave me this image last weekend of why it's so important for us to understand the frequencies of our own solar system before we understand the stars. And this is because we are looking through our solar system before we get to the stars. The stars' frequencies must filter through our solar system before they reach planet Earth. And, Ptolemy's tetrabiglos and his theory of assigning different planetary energies to different fixed stars is very controversial, right? Some people say, oh, it's nonsense. What do our planets have to do with those stars? Well, everything, because it's the observer effect, right? A particle will change from a wave to a particle when it's being observed, okay? Those frequencies have to filter through our solar system before we can understand them. So it's imperative to first understand the Navagraha and the outer planets as well, even though they don't have, rulership over signs or deities attached to them in the Vedas. They're still important because we are a whole unit, right? You can't exclude things. And I'm sure there are other things in our solar system that aren't being observed that are important as well. But this is what we observe are the 9 planets and then the 3 outer planets. So before we can even think about the fixed stars, we must have a firm grasp upon the Grahas. The Grahas grasp us and we must grasp them, it's a symbiotic thing going on. And so understanding these planets like people and understanding that they have personalities like people and you can talk to them and you can appease them and say, oh, Jupiter, please help me, help me, help me, help me. And he'll listen to you, but you got to know his phone number, right? So this is his phone number right here. That's Jupiter's phone number. You do his mantra, you gaze at this, you put on your yellow, your stones, and boy, you've got him on the other line. And so I think that people just don't realize the power they have to shift their consciousness so quickly. I don't know what I would have done without this knowledge going through the pandemic. I think I would have been very lost and depressed. But knowing that okay, today's Friday, I wear my white, I do my Shukra mantras in the morning, and I wear my bracelet, I focus on the yantra and I'm there, I'm in Venus's energy. So it's just helped me a lot. And I think it will help other people too.
Great. I'm sure it will. Great.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Santhip Ji. I just love having you here, and you're so wise beyond your years, and yeah, it's just such a pleasure to have you every time. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Katya.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so if you're interested in any of this stuff, you can go down to my website. I'll put the link below. It's just hindustanastrology.com. And you just go up to the top and click on shop. When you scroll down, you'll see different categories. I've got everything organized according to categories. And right now I only have this available on my website. I do want to get it onto Amazon and to Etsy. But I'm kind of in a, UPC hell right now where I've got to attach a UPC code to about 100 products. And then right now we have a shipping crisis in the United States where we can't hire enough drivers that are qualified. Things are getting lost. Things are slow. So I'm kind of hesitant to send my product out there. I already had one shipment that I sent to a teacher. It was lost and I had to file a claim. And I had another shipment of something else that was sent to me, and it was the same thing. It got lost and I had to file a claim. And, you know, so I'm going to be at the Gift of Light Expo, November 7th and 8th. It's in downtown Columbus, Ohio. And it's going to be at the convention, the Ohio Expo Center is what it's called. All the information will be on my website. You can also go to giftoflightwebsite.com and I'll have all that, but I'll have everything there. And so really I'm kind of gearing up towards this show to have a lot of product available. Obviously I will ship to you, you know, if you need me to, that's not a problem. But right now it's just through my website. So again, thank you so much, Santhip. And until next time, namaste.
Namaste.